Thank you to everyone who has stayed and bared with us as the closer of this presentation. I'm David Bailit. This is Jared Markowitz. The rest of our team sitting up there is Owen Lefkowitz, William Haray, and Andrew Posse. We're here with Tulane University, and we are going to be presenting on the concept of pitch decay and how to analyze longevity and evaluate pitchers from a different standpoint. So part of our inspiration for choosing this topic for our research was Lance Brozdowski's video on the June 2024 matchup of Paul Skeens and Shohei Ohtani. During this game, Ohtani struck out on 3 100-plus mile-an-hour pitches in the first inning, and then proceeded to hit a 415-foot home run off another Skeens fastball in the third inning. In this game, Skeens showed Ohtani 6 fastballs and 2 at-bats before he homered on the 7th, and is a great example of looking at how pitch decay factors into matchups between a hitter and a pitcher. Pitch decay refers to the potential loss of value that one individual pitcher experiences when facing one individual hitter after X number of pitches. As you can see in the bottom left, hitters' expected WOBA jumps as the number of fastballs seen increases. Before I dive into our continuation of research on pitch decay, I want to mention 2 sources that helped us with background data and knowledge for our team. First, Jim Albert, who I believe is sitting up here somewhere, wrote an essay on times through the order effects. He compared WOBA change once a pitcher pitches further into the game using data from starting pitchers during the 2019 MLB season. If you look at this chart on the left, you'll see that the y-axis consists of the difference between WOBA during the third time through the order and WOBA during the second time through the order, while the x-axis is WOBA during the second subtracted by WOBA during the first. You'll notice that Blake Snell, who we will discuss in greater detail later, was considered middle of the pack for successive change in WOBA during his 2019 campaign with the Rays. This means that his pitch mix decayed at an average rate compared to the rest of the league. The second previous work that we looked at was John Rogalay's The Effect of Seeing Pitches. Rogalay looked over a 3-season span, 2011 to 2013, and looked at the WOBA increase per pitch to given hitter from given pitcher in given game by pitch type. He specifically focused on looking at the difference between what he classified as soft pitches, breaking balls and off-speed pitches, and hard pitches, fastballs. He found that soft pitches decay at a greater rate, finding a 0.006 WOBA increase for soft pitches and 0.003 for hard pitches. This correlates with pitch usage, seeing about a 2-to-1 ratio for hard pitches and soft pitches. This research, as well as Jim Albert's research, reveals that the times through the order effect that's often mentioned by MLB broadcasters is very real and specifically affects starting pitchers. So, how can we expand upon this research? Organizations can determine if a pitcher is a true starter or a reliever by evaluating how their arsenal is affected by pitch decay. If teams find that a pitcher has the advanced metrics that prevent decay, they can then determine early in the player's development whether he has potential. They can use this value to determine which pitching prospects to keep and which ones to trade if other teams aren't yet aware of this player's true value. This also allows for in-depth amateur player evaluation even before they fully develop their arsenal, giving teams a leg up in the draft process. As well, managers' in-game pitching decisions are constantly up for debate, and we felt that more research could be done to help them make more informed, data-driven decisions when deciding whether or not to pull a pitcher.
All right, so moving on to in-game decision-making. So imagine a manager in the dugout is facing a critical decision. Our research gives them a new tool. Revolutions per minute data, specifically on four-seam fastballs, can guide those split-second calls, turning instinct into an actual data-backed strategy. For pitchers with low RPMs, under 1950, managers can decide to pull the plug early, even if velocity looks strong, escaping decay before it hits. Knowing when RPM will likely dip at a specific pitch count or inning lets these managers gain the upper hand. This sets the stage for a deep dive into a young pitcher's experience next. So here we are looking at Joey Estes, a young athletics pitcher with raw talent and a story that helps explain pitch decay very well. What stands out most after a deep analysis is that his slider holds firm, even as batters see it more and more, while his fastball varies more, which is proof of its vulnerability under pressure. As we'll see, his secondary pitches, like the slider and sweeper, shine brightest in terms of pitch decay. So moving on here is the actual evidence behind Estez's story. On the left, we can see on the x-axis is repetitive pitch count against batter by pitch type specifically. So for example, at the one spot, that would be the second time that player saw that specific pitch. So this line graph tracks how Joey Estes's WOBA climbed sharply with his changeup, as you can see in blue, after just a few pitches. Batters are adapting fast. Meanwhile, his sweeper and sliders WOBA barely varies, showing its reliability. The box plot on the right adds another layer. It shows that the slider's tight performance range, while his fastballs are spread out much more, even including some clear outliers as well, which hints at an inconsistency that Decay definitely amplifies. This shapes how a team may possibly coach Estez in the future. Let's build on this to see the bigger picture across all pitchers. So right here is the actual root of our analysis. We are zooming in specifically on an important factor, which is spin rate. This graph on the left shows low RPM fastballs, 1500 to 1950, are climbing sharply to over 0.5 WOBA, while higher RPM ones, 2400 to 3000, hold steadily below 0.35, which is proof that spin can be a pitcher's shield against decay when working with four-seam fastballs. Now, looking at the table on the right, we can see that low RPM fastballs tend to have much smaller sample sizes, of course, which show that these pitchers tend to fade out in the game. Meanwhile, the higher RPM pitches have much higher sample sizes, showing that these pitchers can stay deeper in the game. So, oh, and sorry, but here's the average WOBA as well that you can track it with on the left. And then moving on to our key findings. Our research reveals a game changer. Pitch decay is real and it's actually measurable. Low RPM four-seam fastballs, like those under 1950 RPM, lose effectiveness fast, dragging down a pitcher's overall game. This is not just a theory. Teams can use it to improve rotations, knowing when a starter's limit hits. Imagine if managers decades ago had this. They might have avoided iconic collapses that redefine baseball strategies. David will go into one of these scenarios next.
As promised, I will be talking more about Blake Snell. I'm sure all of you are quite familiar with Blake Snell's infamous pulling in the 2020 World Series, but as a reminder, it was Game 6. He had pitched 5.1 innings, only allowed 2 hits and 0 runs when he was pulled. This decision faced and continues to face a lot of scrutiny. However, if we look at it from the angle of pitch decay, instead of just blindly claiming that the third time of the order was coming through, does the defensibility of this decision change? As you'll see on the right, Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, and Justin Turner were the 3 hitters that were due up. Betts and Seager had already seen 5 fastballs each. Turner had seen 3 fastballs. Betts and Seager were in the top 25 in runs produced above average per 100 pitches against fastball that season. And judging by the fact that there was a man on, Snell would likely have thrown a slightly higher percentage of fastballs. If we try to judge this decision from the angle of pitch decay, we know from previous works and our own analysis that the speed of decay depends on pitch type and pitch characteristics. Since our research specifically focuses on four-seam spin rate, let's hone in on that. In 2020, Blake Snell was in the 74th percentile for fastball spin rate among starters, averaging roughly 2,400 RPMs. So we know that his fastball likely decays less than a pitcher with average four-seam spin rate. Perhaps it would have been the right decision to keep him in. To be clear, we are not attempting to make a claim of whether Kevin Cash was in the right or the wrong here. Importantly, we don't like controversy. But more importantly, this research on pitch decay is just a piece of the puzzle that goes into making high-stress decisions like this. The point of this example and case study is to show how research on pitch decay can help managers make better informed decisions regarding their pitching staff. What does this mean for baseball moving forward? Now that we know that lower RPM fastballs decay faster, organizations can better evaluate prospects and have a better predictive understanding of what the future of an amateur player looks like. This also allows an inside edge on other organizations as a front office can more accurately predict future value and therefore leverage that. If a prospect throws a low spin four-seamer, which we know decays more than a high spin four-seamer, scouting departments may devalue that player as they know they have a worse shot of becoming a starting pitcher. When an organization drafts a pitcher, they're hoping that he becomes a starting pitcher. pitcher. And so knowing earlier that their ceiling is a relief pitcher due to the decay risk of their main offering, you're able to better value that player. A great example of this is Mark Appel. For those who are not familiar with Mark Appel, he was the #1 overall pick in the 2013 MLB draft, taken by the Houston Astros out of Stanford University. He was described by Sports Illustrated as, quote, as risk-free a pitcher pick has ever been made, end quote. Unfortunately, that was not true. Risk did pan out, and he did not end up working out for the Astros. When Appel eventually made it to the big leagues with the St. Louis Cardinals in 2022, Savant data shows that his fastball was low spin, averaging in the 1800s. Which, given our findings on its susceptibility to decay, could have given the Astros organization reason to reconsider taking him at #1. It's possible with this knowledge, the Astros may have instead taken a third baseman who went #2 in that draft, whose name is Chris Bryant. So, looking forward, our research has offered new ideas on player valuation, in-game decisions, and a range of other subtopics within baseball, but there's always space to expand. This research, and I really want to reiterate this, is only the tip of the iceberg of a topic that can be researched in much greater depth. There are a lot of other questions that can be asked. We specifically focus only on four-seam fastballs and only on their spin rate. Other questions such as, how does the spin rate for changeups affect their decay? Do curveballs with more vertical depth decay slower? Are all potential questions that can be asked as we go forward. We chose this topic because it's something that excites us, and we think there's a lot more space in the baseball industry to look into this topic, and we look forward to seeing how research on decay develops. We'd also ask that anyone interested in this topic reach out to us, as we'd love to talk more about this, and we'll leave space for questions. But before we take questions, I want to thank a few people. First, SABR and the selection committee for giving us the opportunity to share our research, all of you for taking the time to listen to us and staying until the end of the conference, and especially to our awesome advisor, Bill Hudlow, as without him, I think the 5 of us would have ended up having to hitchhike here from New Orleans. Thank you so much, and love to take some questions now.
Considered the investigation path forward to look at ensemble. Like in the Snell case, they didn't have much relief available to them going, which might have changed the thing. So it would seem like your research could be expanded to say, well, what else do they have available? You know, does the team have available to replace a pitcher who you might think of coming out? And that would involve incorporating the individual attributes of who could take the starting pitcher's place.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I stated, and I'll reiterate here, this is just part of the equation. We're not seeking to present this research as a way to give pitching coaches data and then they can make the right decision every single time. There's a lot of variables that go into the decision, especially in a high pressure moment like Game 6 of the World Series. We just hope that this data helps pitching coaches make a better informed decision, but factors like who's available in the pen certainly play a role in that.
Hi, I think there's sort of like 2 things I think about when I'm thinking about pitch decay. So one would be like the characteristics of the pitch itself changing, you know, like velo drop or whatever. And then the second would be, I suppose, the different the different rates at which a hitter can pick up on a pitch. Are you disentangling those 2 things like at all, or have you thought about that at all?
Potential for data, I'd say.
Yeah, so we basically just looked at it from the factor of the batters learning over time, because we looked specifically at repetitive pitches. For example, if a batter is seeing this fastball for the 3rd time and then the 4th time, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, but there is, of course, still room to improve. As we said before, this is just the tip of the iceberg of this research. And there's, of course, a million different ways you can deep dive into an analysis on pitch decay.
Yeah, hi, great presentation, guys. As a coach, Are you guys implying that pitch decay happens in later in the game when their guys are getting tired, or like, they repetize that pitch? Because when you guys started with Paul Skeens versus Otani, I kind of looked it up. It was a 3-2 fastball in the third. Pirates up 7-0. So do you think it was because he was decaying because he was showing Otani that pitch a lot, or because he was getting kind of tired, which I highly doubt in the third inning?
Yeah, so fatigue definitely plays a role in this. We didn't use that as a specific factor in our research. I think another lens that you can look at this is, are some hitters better at forcing decay, and what hitters adjust better? And further research could be done on that to look at hitter leaderboards and see which guys are doing damage kind of later in the game or earlier in the game, and seeing how stuff decays over time. So I'll say for Skeens, certainly later in the game, you're going to have more fatigue, especially someone like Skeens who's putting so much force into throwing a ball so hard. So I think that's a factor. We didn't look at fatigue specifically. We were just kind of looking at more of the immediate data of how the opposing hitters' WOBAs are changing. And that's just one specific result that we kind of wanted to use as an intro to what pitch decay is. But certainly for modeling work in the future, fatigue would definitely play a factor, because some pitchers are going to fatigue more than others. But what we found here is that if a pitcher is less susceptible to decay, that might be a sign that even if they are getting fatigued and their velo is dropping, the quality of their stuff might still stay stagnant and stay effective.
Thank you.
That was a great throw, by the way. Very interesting presentation. As Decay develops, what is your opinion on how the casual fan might receive this information, as they might not go into this deep of a statistic? Do you think they'll be more receptive? Because in turn, you want to obviously pull the pitcher before it gets to the point where Decay starts to hurt their team. But to the casual fan, it may look like he still has enough to keep going. What is your opinion on how the reception will be towards pitch decay?
I think moving into the future, if they're not already doing it, teams are going to be researching every single pitcher in their bullpen and what pitches specifically decay in their arsenal. So then in turn, I'm not sure if they're going to keep that data private or not, but then they can bring it out to the fans with cool visualizations or something just showing what pitches in each pitcher's arsenal is decaying and why it's decaying, and then maybe a little deep dive into that.
Thank you.
Do you think that that spin rate is or RPMs are an innate? Is that trainable? Is that something that a player could actually improve upon? You had mentioned prospects and maybe the team moving on from them. Do you think that's something the teams could potentially train on and improve? As you know, instead of just saying, a player will have to be a reliever.
Yes, I would hope so. I'll say I'm not by any means an expert on what pitching coordinators are doing with their guys and specific factors that go into improving spin rate. I think the goal is, of course, you want to improve your metrics on every pitch. That's what pitch design is. That's what player development is. I think what this data helps with is if you reach a plateau with your spin rate and you know that this is the most your fastball is going to develop, what we talked about on our title slide is a lot of this is arsenal analysis, and pitching coaches can know how to better utilize the options that their player has. So if they know that their fastball, it has a low spin and that's not improving, you may want to switch to secondary offerings whose advanced metrics, which we didn't look at, we just looked at four-seam spin rate, may not decay as much and be more effective later in games. And then you can change your usage as the game goes on, which is a lot of what we talked about in-game decision-making, can really improve those factors, how you're calling pitches in the first inning compared to the sixth inning.
Pardon me for being a poser, but WOBA is
measure designed to apply to the plate appearance. How is it that you're able to apply to pitches within a plate appearance? What kind of data is being drawn on there to give a ranking in OBA to specific pitches rather than the plate appearance as a whole?
Do you want to talk about this?
Could you just repeat the end of that, please?
You are speaking in terms of a statistic about the outcome of plate appearances, okay? But you're saying that a pitch occurring in a specific circumstance has gone from one OBA to another. I'm asking, what's the basis for that judgment of loss of value?
All of our data is based on StatCast data, so from the 2023 and 2024 seasons. So all of those plate appearances already have WOBA values already inserted. We just have to pull up the data for that and then put it into a visualization. And all we had to do, honestly, metric-wise, was create a new metric for repetitive pitches by pitch type. So for example, in that one chart that we showed, like for the second repetitive pitch, we just had to do a little bit of data wrangling in order, yeah, exactly right there. Do a little bit of data wrangling in order to make sure that it was that batter was facing that specific pitcher in that specific game, and it was that specific pitch type. But other than that, that was the only really metric that we created.
Thank you so much.